The great house in which Holly Anderson lived had always been aligned with her soul. When she was happy, its halls were bright and spacious, and the kitchen smelled of fresh-baked bread, and sunlight shone even in rooms without windows. When she was angry, the floor was splintery, and glass was apt to break. Lately, though, it hadn't changed much, and when the first days of winter came, the whole place had been nothing but groaning wood and darkness for a whole season. Even Mr. Stretch, dangling from the chandelier in the lounge on the second floor, couldn't cheer her up. He twisted around the bulbs and pulled his mouth with his fingers until it reached from one ear to the other, then did a clumsy flip and landed, hands outstretched, on the dining room table. Ta-da! Ordinarily, such acrobatics would have had her in uncontrollable giggling fits, but today she scowled at him until his loopy grin vanished. "What's wrong, Puddin' Pie?"
"Don't call me that anymore. I'm too old for that stupid name."
"Okie dokie." He slid off the table onto his gangly legs, but she brushed past him and went over to the window. It was the largest in the house, taking up half the wall and affording a panoramic view of the front gardens, the long gravel driveway, and the heavy iron gates. It was stormy, and the rain fell hard, as it had since summer began. Holly wished she could step out of those gates and feel what the weather was like in the real world, but the thought terrified her as much as it enticed her.
"Why don't you care about the weather?" she said.
Stretch leaned against the table and scratched his head. "Gee, I guess I don't know. Rain, hail, or shine doesn't bother me."
She sighed. "You don't care because you're not really alive, are you?"
The last two words were more an accusation than a question, and Stretch recoiled, his eyes registering a hint of fear. "Oh, well, sure I am, Holly B. I'm as real as anyone." He rapped his knuckles on the window. "See?"
"I guess."
She folded her arms, appraising him for a minute. She'd given him his name because of his disproportionately long limbs and digits, and the way his face moved when he spoke, his skin flexing and tightening as though each expression was a conscious effort. Everything about his body, from his spider legs to his floppy neck, said Stretch, but she didn't like any of it one bit. Nothing she made ever seemed to come out right, somehow. Everything she created was an almost, a nearly, no matter how hard she tried. Except out there. She turned back to the window and looked past the miserable rain and clouds that surrounded the house, and over to the street beyond, where sun shone on the asphalt and people drove and walked and talked. Real, living people with their own lives and thoughts and feelings. This house was only on the outskirts of the suburbs, but Twisty Lane was a pleasant route through the pines, and the view of Templeton was spectacular, so people often chose to walk it. An old man passed by and glanced her way, but he would see only what Holly wanted him to see. A stately, well-kept mansion, home to a stately, well-kept family, and nothing of note besides. Stretch put a tentative hand on her shoulder. "You look lonely, Holly. Why don't you let Miss Pinky out of the shed and we can all play? Or explore the gardens? Hey, you could even make a puppy dog if you wanted."
"I don't want a puppy dog," she snapped. "And Miss Pinky has to stay in the shed 3 more days, you know that."
Pinky had called her a silly girl when she told her about her dream to leave the house one day, so Holly had to put her in the shed with Greenie and his rusty tools. She didn't want to. She loved Pinky, but it had hurt her feelings, like spikes piercing her heart. It was only right that Pinky should have to feel the same pain. Stretch seemed genuinely worried. "Well, gee, Holly, I just want to help. What's got you down so bad?" She shrugged, guilty for snapping at him before.
"I'm just lonely, Stretch. Everything's so hollow here. Don't you ever get hollow inside?"
He looked blank. Of course he doesn't. He's not like you. He's not like them. None of them are, not Greenie or Pinky or anyone. As if to prove her thought, a boy and girl just a few years older than Holly reached the top of Twisty Lane and passed by the front gates, talking animatedly. Something about them struck Holly right to her aching heart. It was the girl, a dark-haired, rosy-cheeked beauty. It was in the way she smiled as she listened, and then said something that made the boy laugh. And it was in the way the boy looked at her, shy and eager at the same time. He was handsome, too, tall and healthy, like the pictures of the princes in the books she'd read in her library. Holly felt a twinge of jealousy.
"I want to meet them. I want friends like that, real friends."
Stretch looked worried. "Well, I don't know, Holly. Don't you think that's dangerous? There's no control out there, no way to stay safe. The house can't protect you if you go too far away." She didn't reply. The couple had reached Holly's front gate and had stopped in front of it, the boy pointing at something he saw on the house, probably one of the gargoyle statues on the balcony. Holly watched them with narrowed eyes, frustration and desire boiling inside her. And then an idea entered her mind, so clear and simple she couldn't believe she hadn't thought of it immediately. In that instant, a smile that could rival one of Stretch's own lit up her face, and she turned to pull him into an embrace. Stretch laughed and wrapped his ropey arms around her, surprised. Whoa there. What's with the sudden change?"
"I'm sorry about before, Stretch. I'm going to have friends after all. Real living friends from outside."
But Holster, what about leaving the house?"
"I'm not going to leave the house, silly," she said, slapping him on the arm.
She turned to look back out the window in time to see the couple start back on down the lane. For the first time she noticed they were in school uniform, and the bags on their backs said Templeton High. She raised a finger and drew a heart in the misted glass so that it framed them.
"I'm going to bring them here."
For the first time in months, the rain slowed to a drizzle, and Stretch gave her his widest grin yet.